It started with a rash. 13 years ago, I was a successful businesswoman and mother. I had been a professional dancer for most of my life. I had a black belt in Taekwondo. I was strong and fit until I wasn't. What appeared to be a simple rash was actually a rare autoimmune disease that destroys muscles, misdiagnosed as psoriasis, called dermatomyositis. It continued advancing over a period of 3 months where it destroyed my well-honed dancer's muscles. I went from taking dance class every day to needing a walker. I was on my way to get a muscle biopsy when I fell unconscious, was rushed to the hospital, and put on life support. I blew up to 200 pounds within days. I had one vague memory of being taken to the hospital, and then no memory at all of my 11-year-old daughter Jade, my family, my friends, or my husband of 26 years, whom I was in the middle of divorcing. The heart is a muscle, and the disease had destroyed mine. In what can only be described as a series of miracles, the transplant team at Cedars-Sinai listed me as an experiment. They had never seen this disease destroy a heart before. I was not expected to live. However, some things in life are just meant to be. And in 10 days on my actual birthday, I received a heart. Hi, my name is Ava, and I am a heart transplant recipient, and someone's death saved my life. And understanding that has been a soul-altering experience for me. I'm here to share my story with you and to take you on the journey that led me to learn about the inequities in the world of transplant, what I'm doing to change things, and how you can help. I was woken up after the surgery and told that I had a new heart. Then I was intubated and put into an induced coma for 2 months. As I was coming out of it, I realized that I couldn't move or speak, and I was trapped in my own body. There was a light in front of me with bursts of bright colors, and I just wanted to move towards it. I was compelled to move towards this light. I was very aware of the obstacles facing in front of me. I really just wanted to let go and follow the light. And then, all of a sudden, I smelled my 11-year-old daughter Jade's dirty hair. It smelled like the barn where she used to ride horses. And we would fight about her washing her hair every single night. It stunk. And so at that moment, I realized that I couldn't leave her. So I decided to make a deal with God. And I said, if you let me come back to being Jade's mom again the way I was before, I will spend the rest of my life giving back. Everyone's transplant journey is different. For me, because the disease had destroyed most of my muscles, I had to learn to talk again and walk again, everything again. It took me 6 months to go from sitting to standing, and I am grateful every day for every small step forward. Transplant is not just a surgery. It's a total transformation of one's life. And if it takes a village to raise a child, then it takes a community of people to make sure that transplant is successful. Transplant doesn't discriminate between age, race, or gender. It could be you. It was me. I was fortunate to live in Los Angeles near an incredible transplant center. I left the hospital in 4 months in a wheelchair, my money embezzled by business partners, newly divorced and almost broke. But I had my child and my life and the promise that I made to God. After my long recovery, I started volunteering at my transplant center, and it was there that I learned firsthand the inequities that forbid many people from getting listed. For example, did you know that if you can't afford 3 months of doctor-mandated pre- and post-op transplant housing near your transplant center, you can't get listed? Insurance doesn't cover it, and most places don't provide it. While volunteering, I saw many, many people get turned away because they couldn't afford 3 months of post-transplant housing. I met patients whose family members were sleeping in their cars in the hospital parking garages because they couldn't afford temporary housing for months. And then there were those who just chose not to get listed at all because they didn't want to go broke and lose their homes. I witnessed that as well. It was then that I realized how I could make good on my promise to God and give back. So, without knowing anything about how to start a nonprofit, I started one called Ava's Heart. And we provide at no cost the mandated pre- and post-op transplant housing for the patient and one caregiver. Yes, you have to have a caregiver with you at all times, and it usually is a family member. People come from all over the country, all over California, but all over the United States to Los Angeles because we have some of the best transplant centers and therapies and treatments that many other places don't provide. Presently, we can house 5 families at a time, the patient and the caregiver, in 2 homes. Each pair gets their own bedroom and bathroom. The rest of the house is shared communally. This has proven to be so successful because both the patient and the caregiver are with others that are on the same journey that they are on. Every patient that we helped had nowhere else to go. Post-transplant housing is literally life-saving. I received a call a few months ago from a young woman from Colorado Springs who needed to come to Los Angeles for her complicated transplant care. When she was a young child, she received her first heart. It rejected shortly after, so she received a second heart. Now, at age 32, she needed a third heart and a kidney. Her husband is a nurse, and she's a part-time nanny, and there is no way that they could afford housing in Los Angeles and then pay their mortgage back home. When she called us, she said that we were her last hope. When I said yes, she wept. We helped to save her life, just as much as the surgeon in the operating room. I mean, what good is a medical procedure if access is so exclusive? Without the donor, I wouldn't be here. Without the donor, there is no story, no transplant center, no transplant surgeons, no transplant medications, no transplant anything. Donors are our heroes, and they deserve to be put to rest with dignity. Many donor families cannot afford this. Donor families find so much peace in knowing that their loved one is passing on life to someone else. I know this because I speak to these families daily. Why? Because to complete the mission of Ava's Heart, we began to help donor families with small grants for cremation and burial expenses. Last year, we were able to help 54 donor families with burial and cremation costs. So, who should help these donor families with burial and cremation and these transplant patients with post-transplant housing? The government, the insurance companies, the hospitals, the organ procurement agencies. Who? The organ procurement agencies do so much for donor families, and they have the money. But by federal law, they are not allowed to assist donor families with any form of financial assistance because it is considered paying for organs. I think this needs to change. In 1954, the first organ transplant was performed. 17 years later, the first heart transplant was performed. Transplant is a fast and growing field. 7 years ago, there were 25,000 transplants done in the United States. Last year, over 40,000 transplants were performed. Presently, there are over 100,000 people waiting for a life-saving organ. 20 people die every day waiting, and every 10 minutes, someone new gets added to the list. I was at UCLA visiting a 9-year-old little girl who needed a heart, and her mother told me that she would take her to the chapel to pray. And one day, this little girl said to her mother, "Mommy, are you sure it's okay for me to pray for a new heart? Because that means I'm praying for someone else to die." Think about that. I think to shift these inequities, we need to use our voices and our votes and support local nonprofits. Last year, I was a CNN hero, and that helped to get the word out. Open the conversations with your loved ones and your neighbors. Transplant is a growing field and here to stay. I mean, one day you just might be able to go take an organ off a shelf. Sounds like a sci-fi movie? Well, what was science fiction years ago is happening now. All transplant patients and their families are pioneers in this fast and ever-changing field. I'd like to share a very, very special story with you right now. Sean had come to Los Angeles from Hawaii for his complicated heart transplant. A virus had destroyed his heart years ago, and he was very, very ill. He reached out to me not for financial support, but for emotional support and advice. He's a singer-songwriter, and he loves to surf. Sean received the heart of a young man by the name of Zach. Zach's parents describe him as a kind of superhero. He also loved to surf and travel. Zach died at 26 from a massive seizure. He used to take his arms and put them around his mother, she told me, laughing and crying. She said, "I can still feel him hugging me. He had a smile that would melt your heart." Before Sean returned to Hawaii, he met with Zach's parents. Zach's mother was able to take her head and put it on Sean's chest so she could hear her son's heart still beating. And that is the magic of the donor. Life goes on. I think for me, throughout all of this, what I have learned the most is that giving back to someone in need is the most amazing thing that I could be doing with my life right now. I truly feel fulfilled. I am just one person, and we can only help 20 transplant families a year. I'm speaking out about this not just to educate the general public, but our government, that this nation needs a national organization to assist the faces of transplant. I mean, this housing you need for proper recovery. It's an extension of patient care. Most places don't provide it, so if you don't have enough money to pay for it, no transplant. I think that donors are the most special people in the world. I mean, life is the most precious gift that we all have. So what I say to you is appreciate every moment, day by day. Live each day, moment to moment. Eat and exercise as if your life depends on it. And become an organ donor. Someone else's life depends on it. Souls go to heaven, organs don't. I'd like to thank my donor family and every donor family out there. From my new heart to yours, thank you for this incredible opportunity. Just go enjoy life. Thank you.